Good morning. Okay, so what I'm doing, this is a duplicate video, but this go around, I'm going to slow down. My 10-year-old critic told me that the first one, I was just moving through the problems way too fast, and she really couldn't keep up. So I'm going to slow this down, not only for her benefit, but for your benefit too, if you did not understand the first video that I did with division, which is regular division, as well as division with decimals. So here we go. So this first problem here, even though you have the 4 out here and you read from left to right, in division you're going to say 266 divided by 4 equals 66 with a remainder of 2. Doesn't matter if you put a big R or a little r there, but if you have a remainder, you do want to list it or your problem will be incorrect. So the first thing we need to do is we always look at this number that is on the outside of the bracket. I'm sure there's some mathematical name for it, but I'm just a mom, not a teacher. So I do not know that mathematical name off the top of my head. I'm sure I learned it in the 4th or 5th grade, but we will not discuss my age in this video. So the first thing we're going to do is see if we can get 4. We know that we cannot get any 4s out of the number 2 because number 2 is smaller. So we slide over to the 6 and we see if we can get how many 4s we can get out of the number 26. And in this case, we can get 6 4s out of 26. And knowing that, we'll put our 6 there and then we multiply. We multiply this number times this number, and it gives us this number, which is 24. 6 times 4 is 24. Then we do basic subtraction. In division, you will not add, you will always subtract. So in this case, we're going to subtract 26 minus 24, and that's going to leave us 2. So then we have this 6 here because we brought this 6 down, which is the third digit. We brought the third digit down to here, and instead of us having a 2 in this space, we now have a 26, which allows us to see how many times we can get our 4, how many times we can multiply 4 to keep it under 26. So when we do that, we know already what that answer is because we already did it. And so we'll place our last 6 there, and then we'll do the same thing over again. We'll multiply that number times this number, and it's going to give us this number. And we'll do the same thing again. We're going to subtract. 26 minus 24 is going to give us 2. There are no more numbers to divide in this problem, so we are done. So our answer is 266 divided by 4 is 66 with a remainder of 2 because we still had 2 left over after we had fully divided the problem. And so let's move on to our next problem. And so in this problem, we only have 2 digits. In this case, we can get several multiples of 2 out of 6, and that number would be 3 because in 3 times 2 equals 6, because after we see that we could get multiples of this number out of this number, then we see how many times can we do that. Well, in this case, we can do that 3 times. We go 2, 4, 6. That's 3 times. So we'd write our 3 above this number because this is the number that we're working with. Just like over here, we didn't write our 6 over this number because we used 26 and not 2. So we wrote our 6 over the 6 here because that would implicate that we use the 26 and not the 2. So back to this problem again. So we were able to get that 2 3 times into that 6, and so 3 times 2, we multiply. 3 times 2 equals 6. So this number times this number gives us this number. Then we're ready to subtract. 6 minus 6, we're not subtracting 69 minus 6. We're subtracting 6 minus 6. And once we subtract that number, we get 0, but we don't have to write it here. Now, and then when we get ready to do the decimal, the division problems with decimals, we would want to draw that 0 there just as a placeholder, because decimals typically have a different place value than just ordinary whole numbers. And so 6 minus 6 is 0. We don't have to write it there, but we do have to bring our 9 down. So that's why we have a 9 here, because we brought this second number down after we subtract these two numbers. We brought that number down, and how many times can we get, how many multiples of 2 can we get before end state under 9? We can get 4, because 2, 4, 6, 8. That gives us 4. So we'll place our 4 over this second digit, because that is the number that we pull down here. So we're going to place our 4 there, and 4 times 2, we're going to multiply this number times this number, is going to give us 8. Then we subtract again. 9 minus 8 equals 1. Let's move on to another problem that doesn't have the same digits all the way across here. So this problem says 504 divided by 7 equals 72. So let's go through the problem and see how we got 72. Well, we can't get any multiples of 7 out of 5, so we already know that we have to use 50 instead. And in this case, we're going to get 7 times, staying under 50. So we're going to write our 7 over this second digit here. They need to stay in line. And then we multiply this number times this number, and it's going to give us this number. In this case, it's 7 times 7 equals 49. Then we subtract. 50 minus 49 gives us 1. So after we subtract, we pull down this next digit to here, and now we're ready to divide again. So how many multiples of 7 can we get out of 14? Well, we can get it twice, because 7 times 2 equals 14. So then we multiply this number times this number, and that will give us this number. In this case, that's 2 times 7 equals 14. And we know that 14 minus 14 is 0. We don't have to write a remainder of 0, because it's already understood that 72 times 7 equals 504. Or 504 divided by 7 equals 72. Already understood there are no remainders. Let's move over to this problem. And this problem is 633 divided by 8. We cannot get any multiples of 8 out of 6, so we have to move over to 63. And in this case, what we have to do is see how many times we can get 8 out of 63. And in this case, we have 7. So then we multiply, we write our 7 there, and we're going to multiply the 7 times the 8. That's going to give us 56. We're going to subtract 63 minus 56, and that's going to give us 7. But we're not done yet. We've got to make 7 big enough so that we can continue to divide. So we pull this 3 down to here, and then it makes that 73. Then we're going to see how many times how many multiples can we get of 8 and keep it under 73, or get 8 out of 73. And that would be, in this case, 9 times. So then we're going to multiply 9 times 8, or this number times this number. It's going to give us this number. 9 times 8 is 72. Then we're going to subtract. 73 minus 72 leaves us 1. So we know that our answer is 79 with the remainder of 1. So then we move over to our division with decimals. Things are done a little differently in these problems, and so you really have to pay very close attention. Okay, so in this problem, Remember I told you that zeros, they count. They have a different place value with decimals, as I'm sure you've already learned at this point. They have a different place value in decimals than they do in just say regular math without decimals. So we know that we can't get any multiples of 2 out of 1 because 1 is smaller, but we have to note that by placing a 0 here and then putting a decimal to the right of it, because that is where the decimal is here, we're just going to slide that decimal right up there and go ahead and place our 0 there, or any number that we were dealing with, which I'll show you that later. But in this case, it's a 0 because we can't get any multiples of 2 out of 1, so we have to place a 0 there because we can't multiply 2 times any number and get less than 1. So 0 times 2 equals 0 because 0 times any number equals 0, okay? Then we subtract. 1 minus 0 equals 1. But then we have to bring this 8 down, and it now makes that 1 an 18. So how many multiples of 2 can we get and keep it under 18? That would be 9. So at or under that number, okay, that we're looking at. So at or under 18. In this case, that number is 9. And so we place our 9 or our next number to the right of the decimal, just above the number that's in the problem that is to the right of the decimal. So now what we're going to do is multiply. 9 times 2, or this number to the first number to the right of the decimal, times this number will give us this number. 9 times 2 equals 18. So 18 minus 18 equals 0, but we're not done yet. We don't have to place that 0 here, but we can. We slide this 2 down, and so now it's not a 0 anymore. It's 2, or it's 0, 2, which is still 2 if you take that 0 off. So then we see how many multiples we can get out of 2, or 2. How many multiples of 2 can we get out of 2? And that would be 1, because 1 times 2 equals 2. When we multiply, 1 times 2 equals 2. So we get 1, 2 out of a 2. So we write our 1 there, and then we multiply 1 times 2, and then we write that number here, which is 2. And then we subtract. 2 minus 2 equals 0. Alright, so I'm going to skip this problem because it's much like this problem, and I'm going to go ahead to this problem. So in this problem, it is a little different. I'm going to do both of these problems because this one has a remainder and this one does not have a 0 in front of the decimal. And so in this case, how many multiples of 8 can you get out of 8? You know you can get 1. So you're going to place your 1 directly over this number because that's the number that you divided. And then you're going to place your decimal directly to the right of that number, or this 1, because it's just above where it is in this number with the decimal. So you just slide it straight up into your answer. So then after you know that you could get 8 one time out of 8, then you multiply. 1 times 8 equals 8. Then you can bring your 0 here, or you can just imagine that it's there. But you definitely need to next bring this number down to here. In this case, it's a 3. And so we bring the 3 down to here. We can't get 8 out of 3, and this is where this problem is different from these problems, because in the other problems what we might do is quickly hurry up and bring this down, but I got to take you through step by step because every 0, every place matters in dividing decimals. So you can't get any 0 multiples of 8 out of 3 because 8 is bigger than 3, much larger than 3. So you're going to make that 0, or put that number to the right of the decimal, just over the first number to the right of the decimal. You're going to keep that number above that, and then you're going to multiply. 0 times 8 equals 0, because 0 times any number equals 0. And then you're going to subtract. 3 minus 0 equals 3. Now it's time for you to bring this last digit down to make the 3 a 37. Now we want to know how many multiples of 8 can you get out of 37, either at 37 or less than 37. In this case, you can get 4. So you're going to write your 4 above this last number, because that is these two numbers. That's the last number that you had to work with and to divide. And so now you're going to multiply this number times this number. In this case, it's 4 times 8 equals this number, which is 32. And so then you're going to subtract 37 minus 32. And this is where your zeros are needed. Remember the 0 here that you could have written? You bring that 0 down to here. And remember the 0, well, I guess okay. So then we had a 3 here, and then we have a 0 here, because 3 minus 3 equals 0. And then 7 minus 2 equals 5. And so now what we need to do is look at our problem here. And we need to say how many places are to the right of the decimal. Well, the places that are to the right of the decimal it's 1, 2 spaces to the right of the decimal. So you're going to count 2 spaces, 1, 2, and know that you'll place your decimal there. So your remainder is 0.05. Anything that you have left over, any whole number beyond 0 that you have left over after you've gotten the problem to this point and all your bases have been covered up here, then that's a remainder. So in this case, 8.37 divided by 8 is 1.04 with a remainder of 0.05. So our last problem is 5.48 divided by 9. And in this case, you cannot get any multiples of 9 out of 5. And so you're just going to place your 0 there and your decimal to the right of the 0. And now we're ready to multiply. 0 times 9 is 0. And then we're ready to subtract. 5 minus 0 equals 5. Now we're ready to pull down. 4, pull down to make this 5 a 54. Then we're ready to divide again. How many multiples of 9 can we get out of 54? In this case, we can get 6. So we're going to place our 6 there and then multiply that number times this number to get this number. And in this case, that 6 is going to be multiplied by 9 to get 54. And then we know 54 minus 54 equals 0. Nothing, because if you have 54 something and you take 54 away, then you have nothing. Then you still have to go ahead and pull down. Sorry about shifting my page. You have to pull down your 8. And now that you've pulled down your 8, you're ready to see how many multiples of 9 can you get out of 8. It's clearly going to be 0, so you're going to go ahead and write your 0 there, and then you're ready to multiply. 0 times 9 equals 0. Now we're ready to subtract for the final round, and we're going to 8 minus 0 equals 8. And then we simply bring that 0 down, and we bring this imaginary 0 that we got from subtracting 5 minus 5 down to. We're going to move over 2 decimal places because we have 2 decimal places to the right of the answer there. So we got 1, 2. And anytime you're multiplying or dividing, you have to count those spaces to the right of the decimal to know how many times you need to go to the left with the decimal. And so that is our problem. Our answer to 5.48 divided by 9 equals 0.60 with a remainder of 0.08. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it was slow enough. And I hope you have a great day.